I am trying to make an actual TV show.
It's so hard to find a funny show that isn't filthy. I watch them, but I don't want to.
Let's do this.
Fire, like lots of fire.
So dedicated.
So cool. Where's it go from there, you know?
Oh, have I got your attention now?
This is bigger than you can handle.
You got any plans for tonight?
But what are you waiting for? Let's go.
Cool? Absolutely!
Good morning, everyone. How's everyone doing out there? Welcome to SeriesFest Season 10, Day 3. I'm Randy Kleiner. I'm the co-founder and CEO. Who was here with us yesterday? Oh my God, so many people. What happened? In a very typical SeriesFest fashion, I feel like we jam-packed 19 days into one. I mean, I should be saying, happy day 20 is how I feel. But what a phenomenal day was yesterday, and just more jam-packed, amazing programs, events. Check out our independent pilot competition screenings. Those start today, and hopefully you'll be with us over the weekend as well. First of all, just a few quick thanks. First of all, to the incredible SeriesFest staff, as well as our over 150 volunteers who donate their time. Thank you. To our partners here at Denver Film, we are in their Home to See Film Center. Their staff becomes a part of our staff for this week, from the projectionists to the theater managers, house managers, concessions, ticketing, all of it. Thank you so much, Denver Film. And a special thanks to our longstanding partner, Xfinity, who has been with us since season 1. It's really, truly incredible when you have support like that for 10 years, so thank you, Xfinity. All right, you are here for what I know is going to be an incredible conversation. Our innovation talks are sort of our version of keynotes. They're one-on-one fireside chats, and what we really are looking for are people who aren't just speaking the words, but are truly living by them, and the movers and shakers who are really changing and impacting the industry. I had the incredible chance to hear Beatrice Springborn speak most recently at Content London back in December, and I was just so blown away and inspired, and we invited her here, and I'm so thrilled that she said yes. It is truly an honor to have her with us, and you're in for a real treat. So without further ado, she is the president of 2 global companies, UCP and Universal International Studios. Please welcome Beatrice Springborn, and here to moderate, Jessica Radloff, senior West Coast editor of Glamour. Thank you both for being here.
Absolutely. Hi, everybody. Happy Friday. All right. I feel like we should have popcorn up here. I know. Movie theater without popcorn.
Open our insane waters. Not a beer, water.
Thank you, Liquid Death. It's not beer. Oh, really? Now we just need a fireplace, too.
Let's make sure. Okay, the microphones are working.
Microphone is working. Yep, we just need a fireplace and some popcorn and a shag rug, and we're good to go. Anyway, by the way, does anyone tell you that you have the most perfect regal name? Beatrice Springborn. I mean, you should be queen.
It's either a regal name or a Harry Potter name, I've been told. A character from Harry Potter.
It's so beautiful.
Slytherin house. Yeah.
I love that. Well, let's start off first because this is the Innovator panel. So how would you say, what does being an innovator mean to you, both as an individual and also as a studio executive?
Yeah, I think being an innovator means being open to many different ideas that aren't your own, and also being curious. I think the worst executives do not have a one way of doing things. They're not open to change. They don't adjust to change. And the best executives are open to being wrong. And I think innovation comes when you have that mindset that you don't know. I mean, as someone said on the panel yesterday, like no one knows anything. But certainly having that point of view and being comfortable in the uncomfortable and in change, I think is where innovation is formed.
Have you always been good with change? Like, has that been something
Yes.
that has come easy to you?
For better or for worse. I mean,
I'm envious.
I lived in 12 different cities growing up and had to completely adjust to new environments, and I think that helped a bit. Almost to a fault. Like I think I get easily bored and need change. And but I definitely think having that and having to adjust to different situations and pivot and acclimate has helped me. But I also think it's the number one skill set that you need right now to be an executive is not to be finicky. I don't mean like change your mind every day, but to understand that this is a business that changes every 3 to 6 months, especially recently, and you have to be able to adjust the way you look at the business and the way you look at creative and let a lot of things roll off your back. Because if you're too set on doing things a certain way, it's either never going to work or you're going to be be incredibly frustrated.
We were talking about this the other day. I am overwhelmed for you when I hear your, as we just heard when you were introduced, the president of UCP and Universal International Studios. That just seems like the most enormous job. So first, I'd love for you to break down what is the difference between the two studios and how do you divide your time between the two?
So UIS, a lot of acronyms, but UIS, the International Studio, is focused on global series that come from typically a voice that's more international. So someone not in what we're calling domestic, the US. And it will have a point of view that comes from a different country, from a different perspective. But typically they are shows that even if they have a very local point of view to them or specific point of view to them, that they have a global appeal. So an example of that is We Are Lady Parts, which is an amazing show that we do with a woman named Nida Mansour out of the UK about a Muslim rock band. And that is both broadcast on Channel 4 in the UK and on Peacock in the US. So that's a perfect example of something that we do. We have another series coming out with UIS called Day of the Jackal, which has Eddie Redmayne, I should say Tony-nominated Eddie Redmayne, and Lashana Lynch, which is a great story about a hitman trying to find his way international, also going to be on Peacock and Sky. So all of these examples are shows that came from a international perspective or a UK perspective, but are appealing globally. And then at UCP, we are more of a domestic studio. We have deals with people like Seth MacFarlane, Nick Antosca, just to name a few. And the shows originate in the US, even though they may have an international appeal.
What time do you wake up in the morning, especially to deal with
I have
the
an 11-year-old
side?
daughter who gets me up at 5:45 every morning. So I take her to school, I go to work, and then I do most of my international stuff from about 7:30 to 9:30 or 10, and then work on UCP. But the only way that you do it is if you have really good people who work for you. As I like to say, you hire people that are way smarter than you, and you have to delegate and trust that people are going to do the work.
I want to talk about the last few years for you because you were at Hulu before you joined UCP, and you came into UCP. What year was it? It was
2020.
2020. Okay.
Best year for everybody.
Yes. And you were tasked with growing the studio and the output, and you have absolutely done that, but you've also done that in a pandemic and with 2 strikes. What have the last few years been like for you? Does it feel like you could do anything now? I mean, you probably could.
It was more about learning the studio business for me because I came from a network. I think coming from a buyer really helped me on the selling side. Personally, I don't think I would have been able to do it, but then I hired amazing people who had worked at studios as well. I knew what I didn't know. And so hiring those people to supplement my experience or at least explain things to me. I mean, I had never worked with overall deals. So that was another part of the job. I knew how to manage a team. I knew how to work on shows, but I had no idea how overall deals worked or what those, and those are all mini businesses in and of themselves. So hiring people who have that experience in overalls really was helpful, or at least even the studio business. I didn't even understand how our economics worked. So the first 2 years were a real crash course in just the basics of what a studio is, and how it operates. And then finally I found like, okay, a lot of this is similar to being on the buying side. And it's really just about making good shows and having a point of view in in the choices that you make. But at the end of the day, it's really surrounding yourselves with a team that you know is supportive, because I could not do this job alone.
What do buyers want right now? As you were saying, like, this business is changing. I love that you said the business is changing every 3 to 6 months. Usually we hear people say in interviews, like, where do you think the business will be in 5 years? And like, God knows what the business will be like in 5 years. But what do you find that buyers are wanting right now?
I think it's tough. We have this internal debate constantly. You're always hearing from buyers what their mandate is. So, you'll hear from Netflix that they want to do female-driven shows or soaps or YA, or Hulu's looking for true crime or young adult stories. Coming from a buyer, I know that so much of what is successful is never what you ask for. And the things that pop are never what is on that mandate list. I look to some of the shows we've seen have critical and commercial success recently, like Baby Reindeer or Beef or The Bear. And I'm like, no one ordered up those shows on a platter. So I think
maybe they have to have the B in the,
it's gotta have, that's true. I don't know. Wow. I mean, all of our titles are going to.
And you are Beatrice.
Yes,
so,
I know. So
I mean, maybe that is we just cracked the code here at SeriesFest.
It's true. It really, I never really thought about that. That's crazy.
You're welcome. I'll take 15% of all successful shows from here on out.
Yeah, but I think the hardest thing as a studio, because you can't control what a network decides to greenlight, is that we have to continue to maintain a unique point of view and develop from a thematic place versus like, I'm going to, serve up exactly what Netflix is looking for or Amazon's looking for. We have to maintain some risk and opportunity in our slate and not just do what's obvious. And I'm not saying 100% of our slate is that, but certainly 10 to 20% of the slate are things that no one's asking for, but we think as a team are speaking to the thematics in society, are things that keep us up at night, or are appealing to us, or speaking to our greatest desires or greatest fears. And then it's really about quality. So a lot of what they're looking for has to be highly executed, but it's hard because the mandates change. Sometimes you take out an amazing project and it doesn't sell. And you just have to have conviction in your own development skills. Not everything we do is what I love, but you have to know that there's an audience for it. And I definitely think, the questions I have about buyers is, are the buyers connecting with an audience right now? Because you can't buy based on yourself. You really need to buy based on what you think others are going to be attracted to.
You were talking a lot about your team and how much you depend on them. Talk a little bit about their interests overall, because you were saying your interests are more indie.
If I was programming a network for myself, it would be the Beatrice Springborn network would be so independent. It would be like the Sundance Channel in the 90s. Like no one would watch it, or at least five people would watch it. It'd be like Criterion Collection of television. But I know as an executive, I have to buy based on things that I might never watch. And so having a team that has different skill sets. So, we have an amazing creative acquisitions team who's looking at all the books that are coming out. We have people on our team who love comics and manga and anime. We have people on our team that are really into film and feature directors. So it's having a Swiss Army knife of a team that can look at things in different perspectives or come at it from a different way, and just based on their interest. Because again, I would just be serving up the most independent, straight to radio TV show if I were the one.
Although, however, I have to say that before this panel, you watched The Idea of You last night with Anne Hathaway.
The new Anne Hathaway movie,
and I feel like everybody's gonna love that. Like, that's a mass rom-com, and you loved it.
I loved it.
You're selling yourself short, saying it would just be the indie network.
Yes, I definitely. I have a wide, attraction to shows, but it's just sometimes it's just dependent on who's in it or what it's about, and Yeah.
By the way, the after panel will be B talking about
This movie.
the idea of you, because you have so
I had
the
notes.
best thoughts on it, and we have had the best time talking about it. Let's discuss some of the amazing shows that you have helped champion at Universal Television. What are you most proud of right now that's either has just been airing or is about to come out the rest of the year?
Yeah, it's been a really eclectic slate. So everything from the Umbrella Academy, which we have season 4 coming out with. We just did a TV series around Ted, the talking dirty bear, which was a fun one to work on, and one of the biggest comedies that we've had on Peacock and also internationally. We did a show last year with Nick and Tosca called A Friend of the Family that dealt with some really delicate subject matter, but had an amazing cast that was incredibly exciting. We just did a show for Peacock called Apples Never Fall, based on a Leanne Moriarty book. I developed a Leanne Moriarty book at Hulu as well, and just living in her world, and it's so juicy, and the familial relationships in it are so fun. And it was Annette Bening and Sam Neill and Jake Lacey and Allison Brie, and just a crazy cast. That was fun to shoot because we shot that in Australia. And then we have coming up a show called Teacup that we're doing with James Wan. We're doing the show I talked about, A Day of the Jackal, which is the one with Eddie Redmayne and Lashana Lynch. We have a series that we're doing with Colin Firth that's coming out about the Lockerbie bombings, the Pan Am Lockerbie bombing, told from a father's point of view, whose daughter was killed in that crash. So it's really eclectic and across the board. And we have, there's so many additional to that, but that's just the tip of the iceberg.
I'm so glad you brought up Apples Never Fall. I loved, if you guys haven't had a chance to watch that limited series yet, it is so good. I talked to Leanne for a piece at Glamour, and I was like, I selfishly want there to be a second season because I just want to see what happens with the Delaney family moving forward. But talk to me about, this is a limited series, obviously. You attract these names that you just mentioned, like Annette Bening, Sam Neill, Allison Brie, Jake Lacey. What are the pros and cons of doing a limited series? Because that's where there seems to be so much excitement nowadays. But then the downside, of course, is that that's it afterwards. So what are the pros and cons for you, and what do you look at with those?
I think the pros are you can get the most amazing cast to do it because it doesn't require subsequent seasons. And it's usually a subject matter that is, easier to explore in a more limited way. So you get a lot of really salacious topics or just completely entertaining worlds. The harder part of that, most of the buyers want ongoing series right now. And so the limited has to be very, and I put undeniable in quotes because I think that's, that's a subjective term, but you're looking at things that they usually have to have big stars. There has to be a script, but definitely buyers, as much as they say they want ongoings more than limiteds, there's such an opportunity with awards for limiteds, and a lot of limiteds get that award space and that award attention for both the actors and for the series. So it's fun for us too, because getting to do those one and dones, but there's a lot of just upkeep, and you have to do a marketing campaign that you have to reinvent for every limited, and I think that's where you see the cons.
Because you worked with Leanne at Hulu, did that help with bringing her over for this series? And then talk from there about really creating these relationships with these authors and these showrunners and what is entailed there, because you do want to stay in business with them.
Yeah, we really want to be in the business of repeat business, especially because we get a lot of referrals from other showrunners. And so you always want the experience to be good. There's always ups and downs on shows. You always have problems, but I think how you deal with them and just having an honest and open relationship as you're moving through it has been helpful to us. With Apples Never Fall, that was a book that David Heyman, who had produced, I'm sure you know, Wonka and Barbie and the Harry Potter series. So he has an incredible pedigree in terms of development and bringing shows to life. And so he had wooed Leanne when they read this book and had a great point of view on how to shoot it and how to bring it to life. I think for Leanne, the thing that was most important to her on this one was to be an executive producer. She had not been an executive producer on Big Little Lies or on Nine Perfect Strangers. So my experience with her on Nine Perfect Strangers was more like, great, we're going to start this, like, tell us what you do and don't want, and then you don't talk to them until the premiere, typically. On this one, she was really involved with the table read and with picking the showrunner and giving notes on actors, and that really helped in terms of bringing the book to light, and also just talking about decisions that characters would and wouldn't make. And I think in general, we would love to have authors involved in that development process, because they've lived with the characters way longer than we have, and bring something to the fabric of the show that without them would not be there.
You have had such great success with bringing books to the screen. I mean, you should read up on Bee's track record at Hulu, which truly incredible. Because your job is so much more expansive now and on a grander scale, how much time do you get to read? I know you have an acquisitions team, but how much time do you get to read books and then try to go after these authors now?
I wish I could read more, because it's the one place that it's like my most happy place to be reading books. But we have a creative acquisitions exec named Jordan Moblo, and he has an incredible team. So they'll flag things for us, and a lot of times we'll flag a couple things for him. But it's hard, you know. I'm usually reading the coverage on something and then deciding if I want to read it, and I have the luxury of doing that. But it still is the number one place, I think, to find viable material to develop from.
I know you were saying that people want to be in the business now of repeat business and everything. And one of the shows that you guys produce that's coming back for a second season, which I'm really excited about, is based on a true story to Peacock with Kaylee Cuoco and Chris Messina. Was that, talk us through that decision, because was it originally intended on maybe being just a limited series? And how did you decide that there is more here to really explore? And also, again, like working with a Kaylee and a Chris, and especially Chris, who doesn't do much television. He loves to do the limited series and the movies and everything. So what is it like working with those actors and then making sure that people know there is a home here, that there's a lot of exciting things to stay with a series?
Yeah, I mean, second seasons are always born from success, either critical or commercial, and based on a true story was incredibly successful for Peacock and for us. And so even in the development process of the first season, we felt like there was so much story and so many, alleyways we wanted to go down that we weren't able to explore just because of time and limited number of episodes in the first season. And then Kaylee was an EP on the show, so her excitement to do another season, the success of it. We brought on a showrunner named Annie Wiseman, who had done Physical, and she's been incredible. And Chris has become an EP this season. So I think having the talent investment and support is always what you need to make a show come alive. And then it is such a commentary on, the obsession and the ridiculous obsession with true crime right now, and how a lot of people see it as this almost like a pressure valve to live through when their lives when they're having a tough time. So we wanted to have a commentary on, which we do a lot of those true crime shows, but a commentary on the reaction and the engagement with those. And I think that helped, just having that in the zeitgeist.
By the way, when might that premiere? They're just starting. Could it be this year?
TBD.
Okay. Very good. We do have to talk about a show that has gotten a lot of buzz, which is Suits LA. Talk about, that had to have been a no-brainer to kind of bring that to life. So talk about that, but also how did you decide that NBC was the right home for it instead of maybe just premiering on Peacock?
Yeah. So Aaron Korsh, who's the creator of Suits, brought us a script that was set in LA with lawyers. And just what was very cool about it is, like any LA set world with a procedural, you deal with musicians and actors and sports figures, and the world just seemed ripe for drama. And then it had the, very Aaron Korsh / Suits approach of just incredible characters. Like I always say, I love that show because it's good looking people and good looking clothes, but that's like the base level to it, right? So it draws you in with this incredible shiny world, but he's such a good showrunner and such a good writer and can draw all these character arcs throughout the series. And then it's in a sexy location. So yes, it was a total no-brainer for us. And then in terms of NBC, I wasn't in charge of this decision, but think that the reason that they decided to do that was just to have a much larger audience for it. You know, it did incredibly well on Netflix, and that you can't deny that Netflix machine of being able to expose a show to so many people. And I think learning from that and knowing that NBC would be a great place to platform because of that wide, expansive audience. And it's a show that appeals to literally everyone.
Yeah, I didn't know a single person who wasn't watching it I was like, wait, when did this premiere on Netflix? It was last summer, which I don't know what time is anymore, but yeah, cannot wait for that one. With all of the meetings and everything that you're dealing with on a day-to-day basis, I'm curious, I don't want you to necessarily run through what a typical day looks like, but what excites you when you see it on your calendar? Like if you see something scheduled on your calendar, what is super exciting for you? And also, is there anything like when you see it on the calendar, like, oh crap, I would have to do this today?
I'm energized by meeting with talent, and having conversations about future projects, or sitting with the team and just brainstorming on like, what would we love to see, or what are we looking at, or how are our projects going? I love those meetings. I think the hardest part of this job is you do become the person who's dealing with problems mostly. So a lot of it is having to put out fires or deal with things that didn't get solved, that have now gotten to an extreme level, and that can be energy sapping, as most of you know who've dealt with problems, and you do get a little bit of decision fatigue. So I think the key is just balancing your days, knowing that you are absolutely going to have to deal with those fires no matter what, and then having some respite from that in the creative.
By the way, when it comes to knowing what might hit for an audience or what might sell, like, what is it about a project that makes you think like this has legs, this could be it? Because I would imagine you're dealing with so much content that it gets hard to think like, gosh, is this gonna work? Is this not? So what is it that maybe kind of leads you in that direction of this? I think this could really work and be something.
It's not one thing, it's a specificity. So is it a point of view you haven't seen before? Or, you can read a million rom-coms, but having a very specific point of view into it, whether that's, it's a younger romance, it's a will they, won't they, it's a older, I'll just reference the movie I watched last night. It's an older woman and a younger man who's a rock star. So there's a specificity to it that you haven't seen before. The quality level is really important. So sometimes I think quality to me trumps all. So you could see something you've seen before, like a procedural or a YA romance, but when it's written, and this is such an obvious thing to say, I know, but when it's written at the highest level, or it's just so well done. Like, I think that's the thing about Suits, is we've all seen procedurals and shows set in a law firm, but it's just the dialogue and the characters and the fun of that is like beyond, right? And so I think the quality shows that. And then if those, we haven't seen it before. I'll go back to quality for a second, because I do use, and not to go back to The Bear, but everyone has been pitched a version of a restaurant show. And I mean, truly, like, everybody's been pitched that show. So I think when we were first seeing it as executives, we were like, map, there's that restaurant show everybody pitches, but it was so well done. The actors were so amazing. It was, again, it was something that anybody could have done, but the way they did it and the way they cast it made it excel beyond anything else. So I think it's when you see something like that really helps. And then the last thing is, if we haven't seen something like this before, or it's speaking to the zeitgeist or thematics that we're talking about.
You mentioned that you've lived in 12 different cities, which That's incredible. That's a lot. Where did you spend most of your years growing up? And I'd love for you to tell the audience what you originally wanted to be when you were starting out. Because I know a lot of people must ask you, like, what did you want to be when you grew up, and how did you get this job? So tell us a little bit about the background.
I grew up most of my childhood was in Minneapolis. We lived in Minneapolis, Kansas, Maine, Minnesota, and different cities within those places. My mom was a professor. She was actually going to school most of the time, and my dad was a printer. When they used to print things by hand. And I never thought this was a career. Now looking back, I grew up in a very creative household. My parents watched they had pirated HBO, don't tell HBO, and they had a pirated copy of Star Wars on Betamax. So they were really engaged in the arts, but it wasn't a career I ever thought I would follow. And I went to school for journalism. So I was going to be a journalist, and then the internet crushed that dream. I was going to be a newspaper journalist, and then the internet crushed that dream.
And you went to work at Pixar.
I did. I
Tell
had a
us
career
about
as a journalist for a bit. I worked for Texas Monthly and did a small job at CNN working on the Unabomber case. I worked for a startup. I wrote some articles, and then I fell into development. I got a job at Pixar when they were starting their development department to make to make movies every 1 to 2 years versus every 4 to 5. So it was incredible time to be there. It was Monsters Inc. and Finding Nemo and the first Cars. And I went on to manage the art department on Ratatouille.
I was listening to a podcast that you did recently, and you said it was a risky move to leave a very cushy job at Pixar and move to LA. Why did you want to move to LA?
Yeah, I was a dum-dum and left all my Pixar stock on the table to go to grad school on a loan. But Pixar taught me so many things about working in a creative environment, at all levels, and how to treat people, and just storytelling. They are, the experts at crafting stories that are both follow the hero's journey and, what makes a good story. And it was such a boot camp for me in terms of development and being around that amazing group of talented people. But I wasn't in love with animation. I think the same way most people are there. I wanted to work in live action. Animation is an incredibly slow development process. Development is slow already, and you're working on a movie that might start 10 years ago. You don't see it come to life for 10 years, sometimes between 7 to 10 years. And and I didn't know anyone in LA, and I just went to grad school as a way to move to LA, get paid by my student loans, and learn the film business, and started working for a producer who I met through someone at Pixar, and worked in features and worked my way up.
See, you were not a dum-dum. It was
it was
smart,
at the time. My
smart
parents were literally like, what are you doing? You have the perfect job. I think a lot of people were like, you have the perfect job. But I think sometimes you have to take those risks to have reward.
I was going to say, one of the reasons I know you are so successful at what you do is because you're not afraid of risk. You don't play it safe, which is what you have to be 10 steps ahead of the audience, of knowing not necessarily what they're going. Well, you have to know what they might want, but also it's that quality of storytelling and willing to step outside of the box. So when did you know then that you were really good? I hate to say as a TV executive, because what does that mean exactly? Yeah. But how did you know you really had a skill set for what you do now?
I think when shows that I was involved in, and that's for executives, I think there's not one person who's ever responsible for a show, but shows that I had championed or fought for that both were commercially successful and critically successful. At Hulu, it was, The Handmaid's Tale, which, again, that was a total risky show at the time. And because of, I think, many things, circumstances, the people that we chose to work on the show, the political environment, there was many things that made that successful. But that one, Normal People, which was a tough one in terms of not being obvious on the page, but felt like something that had never been done before. and only the reason I say never been done before, because we really looked at that show as not just about will they, won't they, but the fact that you can have young love can be real love. And I think a lot of people haven't done a show like that. It's all about puppy love or, wish fulfillment versus like you can have someone in your life at that age that you truly had a love affair with and that meant something. So I think just looking at things from different perspectives and then having things succeed that I championed, you definitely don't know that you're good at something until they start succeeding, and they're like, oh, maybe I know what I'm doing, right? And then I've also championed shows through other executives that I did not see, but they were also successful because that executive knew what they were doing. And so a lot of times it's not just you making the decision, but trusting other people on your team to know what they're doing and to have a point of view that might be totally different from yours.
What is premiere day like for you with one of your shows?
It's different on the buyer side than the seller side, right? Because I think on the buyer side, on the seller side, you have shows everywhere and you're still massively invested in it, but it's just a different, it's a different feeling. But it's nerve-wracking. I mean, to have a successful show, I say is it's literally a miracle now. So you just have to have the right chemistry and the right marketing. And sometimes it's out of our control because the marketing is really key to getting the show over the top. Yeah. But I'm proud of many shows that haven't been commercially successful too, and you love them all equally, so mostly equally.
You have worked with so many incredible people, and you've listed Craig Erwick and Dana Walden at Disney, ABC, specifically as mentors. What did they teach you?
I think every point of my career, I've learned something new. So Pixar was like development and storytelling. Hulu was leading a team because we built that team from, it was 2 people to 50, and we were only doing 2 shows a year. We started doing 25, and there was a real focus on being a good leader. And that sounds, sort of silly, but I think it was really about how to empower people to be great at their jobs. And so that's what I took from that job and from Dana and Craig, and having a real point of view and fighting for the things that you believed in. And then on the studio side, for me, it's been about managing volume. I was not someone who could manage this amount of volume before, and I still struggle with it on days, but you absolutely need to be able to manage this amount of volume. And also understanding the economics of shows, because you have a portfolio across many different platforms versus just one. Right. And also you realize that there's a world beyond just one network. So you get to meet all the networks, and you get to meet all the buyers, and you get to meet so many executives and writers you didn't work with because you were just at one buyer. Mm-hmm. So certainly I think in every step of my career, I've been able to learn something new or expand my horizon.
And now you're working with Perlina Igbokwe, who I absolutely adore. I've known her for years, and she's so smart. And then also Erin Underhill. What have you learned by working with them as well?
Well, I always take jobs based on not what the job is, but who you're working for, because you could have the most amazing job and be working for a total nightmare, and it's terrible. So for me, I went to go work at Hulu for Craig, and I went to go work at the Universal Studio Group because of Perlina. And Perlina and I had worked on a show together when I was at Hulu, and it was a tough show. And I think seeing her character when you're in a tough position was really what drew me to Universal Studio Group. I knew that she was someone that in the trenches and even on the worst of days would be a real human being and have a strong guiding hand in the creative. And she's phenomenal. And talk about volume. I mean, she runs 4 different studios and is across unscripted and domestic and international, and is always just kind and composed. And those are the kind of leaders that I want to work for.
And then when I ask somebody like Perlina, like, how do you do all of that? And she points to people like you, because she's like, I couldn't do it without my team. And it really is a collaborative effort. Like, people say that all the time, like, oh yeah, it's, we all work together, but you have to in this, because there's no way you could possibly just find all of this content, meet with all these people, if you didn't trust each other in this whole process.
For sure. And TV is absolutely a team sport. You cannot do this job unless you are open to relying on other people and also taking the back seat. Like, you're not always the captain.
One thing that I always like to ask a lot of people in interviews is, what advice do you like to give to those that either work for you or people that want to follow your career path? And the thing that drives me nuts is when some people, they will just say to me, hard work. And I'm like, okay, well, obviously, but there's got to be so much more than that. So what advice do you love to give to people that either want to follow in your career path, or also, you know, ones that are working for you? What would you say to them?
There's a couple things. I think you've heard some of the advice I've given before that sounds like it's coming from a negative place, but it's not. It's a super tough business, right? It is a lot of hours. It is sacrifice. It is, difficult personalities. But at the end of the day, I have these meetings every couple of weeks or months where I'm like, oh my God, I'm sitting in front of so-and-so, or I just got to hear a pitch from Seth MacFarlane, or, you really pinch yourself. And I think the number one thing to have, even as the business is tough, is gratitude. I don't take for granted that I sit in this position and I get to work with creative people all day, and I get to work on a studio lot where all these amazing shows have been shot, and it just feels, this is a silly word, but magical. And so just not taking that for granted and realizing how special it is at all levels, at my level, even for the coordinator that I work with, just recognizing that. I think always pick jobs, like I said, based on the people that you're going to work for instead of the job you're going to do, because having someone who's going to teach you something new is super valuable. And then I said this on my podcast, I will say it again. I'm like, the hardest part of this business is being able to be open to risk. And the only way you can do that, and this is easier for me to say in my position, but I always say, keep your overhead low, because I see people go crazy and like get into this business, buy houses, like buy Porsches, go bankrupt. I'm like, especially if you get to, being a president of a studio, I know that I can make hard decisions because I'm not scared of losing my livelihood. And that's the Midwesterner in me, I guess. But, and that's a luxury that not everybody has. But when you do get to a level, to be able to not get caught up in the lifestyle, the luxury of this business, and to maintain a level head, and also to realize that there's a life outside of the business. I always say the business doesn't love you back. So maintain just a good, healthy perspective on what it is, and know that it's not your whole life. That your life is not dependent on famous people or writers or actors, and that you have a life outside of that is more important than the work we do.
How do you create boundaries then, especially on weekends? Because
I'm good with it now. I'm much better. Again, I'm in a position where it's easier to do that, because in some ways I can do that myself. I don't take calls after 7 p.m. unless someone's hurt, there's a massive amount of money at stake, or there's something that's going wrong. I will respond to people, but I want to see my daughter and go to her sports practice and have dinner with her, and I think we create sometimes unnecessary busy work and false fires that just create more stress where there doesn't need to be it.
Yeah. What's the biggest misconception about your job?
Well, I think from the studio perspective, a lot of people think that we have control over what gets picked up. So we don't. We just, we sell to networks, and they make the decision ultimately. So we have to just do the best we can in curating a slate that we think is going to be commercial. But I don't know the answer to that. I think, that it's probably more fun it looks more fun from the outside, but we do get to do incredibly cool things. And I don't know.
It was funny. Well, I was asking this of one of your colleagues, Jim Donnelly, who was here at SeriesFest the other day, and I think it was him, or it might have been Megan McMillan, that said, people think that our names are going to be in the credits of all the shows that we work on. And then they're like our parents are like, where's your name in the credits? It's not here. And you're like, well, that's not really how it works. They don't put all the executives in the credits and stuff. But people that don't work in this industry sometimes are like, those are things that they're like, I had no idea about that you have to deal with,
Yeah. Or even how shows are made. I think there's just, until you're doing it, and until I was on a set, I had no idea how shows were actually made. And so to be able to sit there and understand like what everybody does on a set is so valuable, and something that I think you don't know until you've actually been there.
How do you deal with disappointment? Because like you said, there will be shows that you champion and you really believe in, and then you just have a buyer, that doesn't get it or has something like it. So how do you deal with that? Because it is a daily part of this business.
I'm someone who, if I have a disappointing day or someone passes on something, I will immediately be like, what's going on? That's great. Like, tell me some good news. So a lot of times I'll offset it with just, looking at the projects that are going really well, or leaning into the things that feel good. Maybe that's my escapism, but I'll go, okay, let's talk about like, okay, yeah, we got to pass on that. That's terrible and sucks. But ultimately, I want to keep leaning into what's good. And I am an optimist. Like, even with the craziness in the business right now, I see a lot of human innovation and rethinking the way we do things. And I think it's time for us to do that. So even in the worst of times, and not to sound like a Pollyanna, but I really believe it, I definitely think we're seeing changes, a forced change that is forcing people to look at how they do things.
Before we open this up to audience Q&A, tell me what energizes you the most right now. You were saying you're an optimist. So what excites you, and also how do you avoid burnout? Because this is such a grind that you're doing on a daily basis. Even when you stop the calls at 7, you're still thinking about things. So, so what does excite you going forward, and how do you just keep that going?
Yeah, I'm excited by the younger, I put in quotes, younger people on our team who, are forcing conversations that we weren't having before, and also forcing us to look at things differently. And I mean that from every perspective. Like, why are we doing things like this? Why do we need to have 18 people on a call? I'm energized by asking those questions and hopefully seeing some changes. And sometimes it's slow because things don't change overnight. But I also think even post the strikes, even with the coming of AI, everything that's going on right now, it's just forcing ourselves to look at, are we really doing things the way they need to be done? And I deal with burnout by, as I told you last night, I ordered a pizza and watched a movie. I'm like anyone else, I'm into completely checking out and doing something that turns off my brain. And sometimes I can't watch scripted TV to relax most of the time. I'm usually watching because I think about, they could have done this or this project, or it'll remind me of something else. So I watch unscripted trash TV or rom-com movies or like foreign films or something that's completely different from what I do.
Well, that's what's like when people, friends are like, do you want to go to the movies? And I'm like, no, I do this on a daily basis of watching things. It's exhausting. You want to be able to tune into things that really help you escape all of that. So
for sure.
Yeah, I totally get it. And I totally endorse the rom-com and the pizza night. And you have to do that.
I play cards on my phone. I have an app that
I love it. Okay, let's open this up to Q&A. I can't see much of anything, but I do see, yes, I see a hand right there.
Sorry, it's a very basic question I should probably know, but can you explain the buyer-seller dynamic when it comes to shows and stuff?
Sure.
Like network versus series, I'm not sure, or studios. I'm not sure exactly how that works.
So the platform is typically, by the way, I didn't know half of this before I started a studio. So the platform is, like a Hulu, Amazon, ABC, NBC, who buys shows from, sometimes they make them internally with their own studios that are owned by that company, and sometimes they buy them externally. So our studio, we make shows for everybody, whereas at a network, they just make shows for themselves. So we make shows for Hulu, Peacock, Amazon, you name it, and also for our internal platforms. But yes, we are a supplier to everyone, while the network just is the broadcaster for that one place.
I know there was another hand, but it's okay. Sounds sure. Whoever wants to go. That's okay. We'll go you first, and then we'll definitely get you.
For acquisitions, as far as books go, how frequently do you guys determine you're going to develop something before it's published? And how often do you wait until it hits like the bestseller mark? And how frequently do you actually develop stuff that you just are passionate about and never really hits bestseller status?
Yeah, it's a combination, but typically we develop things that have not been released yet, so we have to make a call on whether we think it's going to be successful. I mean, for example, with the Leanne Moriarty book, all of her books are on the bestseller list, so in that case. But we work with like Jenna Bush Hager, we have a deal with, who does the book club for the Today Show. She gets in a ton of books that she's always flagging for us. Jordan Mobla, who and our acquisitions team are flagging things for us. But it's typically sometimes 2 years out that we're flagging something and developing. And you hope, fingers crossed that it hits. We also sometimes we pick up books that other places have optioned, but they haven't developed it, and so we know by that time if it's been a hit. And what was the last part of the question?
Just if you ever determine after something's been published, like a hunch or just a recommendation, this is worth developing.
Absolutely, yeah, and it doesn't have to be a bestseller. There are a lot of books that have the fabric to make a great TV show that need a ton of development, right? Or that need a showrunner to come in and stretch it out into a series. So we'll look at things even after they're published. If they're not bestsellers, that might work better as a TV show.
My question was about the economics and quantifying success for a limited television series.
It's interesting to go into this, and this is the part I did not know about studios. So some of our shows we sell to streamers, and we get a cost plus deal, which means they pay us 100% plus a premium on a show. And in those cases, if the premium's great, we're like, great, we made this one show. We don't have to worry about the economics of it. There are other shows where we get less than 100%. So we get, somewhere between 90 and 100%. And then we'll take it internationally and sell it. So really it depends on the subject matter. We've had true crime series that sell really well internationally. Leanne Moriarty sells well internationally, but then you have some series that you make that might not travel as well. So what's really interesting on the studio side is you have different shows that are sold under different models. Some make huge amounts of money, some make losses, and you're balancing the portfolio to hopefully make a significant profit, but just based on what those different economic models look like. But depending on the limited, there's no real difference between what you might sell a first season of an ongoing show for versus what you might sell a limited for. The only negative in the economics is that we don't have multiple seasons to capitalize on. And that's a big negative.
What would be something for like a period drama limited series? Like how would that do?
It depends, something like it really depends on the auspices involved. So we have a deal with Carnival Films, who did Downton Abbey. If they did a limited series, they have a reputation for being able to do those really well. But if you come in and it's like an unknown writer with a very obscure idea that doesn't travel, it's much harder to sell. So it's really about the package. I know a lot of buyers say, we don't want period. But if you have the right package, it makes sense and does sell.
In the middle, yep.
My name is Patrick Hampton. First of all, how much do you miss working with Andy Holton from Hulu? And second of all, I'm affiliated with Screenplay IQ. So are you using AI at all in your daily?
We are not. I mean, I think there's TB, I always think there's still going, as much as everyone's talking about AI taking over, there's still going to be a human factor in all of it, right? You see that in all technology. And as someone so eloquently talked about yesterday on the panel, I don't remember who it was, but we don't know how the effect of AI is going to exist yet. There's a lot of rights issues and copyright issues to figure out that are still TBD. So I very much am tracking AI and curious in the evolution, but it's a bit too soon to talk about the impact on our industry. And then I don't know the person that you just referenced. Oh. Oh, nice. Maybe pre my time. I got there when Hulu was already around for 7 years. So, yeah.
I'm sure there's a lot of people
I
at
know.
Hulu. There's,
Yeah.
I know. Who else? Yes, Alicia.
Fantastic job, guys. Obviously, always. My big question is, how often do you make something and then sell it? Like, what is the bring the package uncreated to the streamer?
Yeah, it's more common. We typically don't make a whole show and sell it. That's not our model. On the broadcast side, they do deficit more than we do. We usually sell something and know that the financing is fully in place. There'll be some times in the international market where we'll take a small deficit on something that already has distribution, where they're looking for international sales, and that's where we'll come in to do gap financing. But on the cable and streaming side, that kind of deficit financing is rare.
So you'll wait till you have the buyer.
Yes, and or we'll come in where there's a need, like we'll sell, like BBC will be doing it, but they're only paying a certain license fee, and they need us to come in to finance the rest of it before they sell it worldwide, and that's where we'll come in.
Maybe you answered this, by the way, but what was your major in college?
I was a journalism major.
You were a journalism major.
Yeah.
I mean, you should have an honorary business degree right now. And
Still learning.
I'm so amazed. Who else had a question? Anybody? Yes.
How do you guys feel about in the industry about buying web series? Is that something that they still do? I know it's Insecure. It was like a huge thing. Is that still something that's going on, or is it kind of like?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think so many web series prove that there's a prove it before you do it, that there's a marketplace. I think the tough thing now, and I'm going to completely not remember his name. My daughter and me have started watching this web series on Amazon about a guy who's working his way across the country. He has a penny and he has to, he's raising money for feeding the hungry. And every time someone donates $50,000, it resets back to a penny. So he's having to do all these ingenious things like sell water on the beach, or, it's like one of the most entertaining shows I've ever seen. My daughter's like, you should try to do that as a scripted or as a unscripted show. And I was like, the problem is that those YouTubers or those TikTokers, they make a really great living, right? Doing that. They don't need to do a scripted show. And also they're financed in a way where they don't need us. So I think the question's more about, is it a show that needs scripted development or unscripted development to take it to the next level, or to make it something beyond what it already is? Because I think there is an audience for both, and it just is dependent on what it is, right? But knowing that, like, Insecure, phenomenal show, like knowing that show came from there, and I'm certainly always open to seeing web series, and I do think it is a test ground to show if there's a real idea there.
These are great questions. Anyone else? Oh, there's one up there. Great. Thank you.
Do you develop everything internally or with partners like Seth MacFarlane, or do you take pitches from independent producers on shows?
Yeah.
Do you develop it with them, or you just sort of?
We have some core overall deals and talent deals, producer deals that we have, but we absolutely develop with producers from outside, and they're introduced to us through agencies or through other people we know, but we develop with everyone.
Oh yeah, sure. Hey, I just took a lot away from how you just kind of talked about your work-life balance, and I'm sure we can all relate to a really busy life. What's something that you do on a daily basis or a regular basis to really just kind of stay grounded, that keeps you coming back every day with a good attitude and a good approach to all the work that you do?
I think I have a sense of humor about it. Like, I find so many things to be so absurd. Like, so many things to be so... I literally feel like I'm in the office every day. And I don't mean that about my workplace. I just mean it about this business. Like, you just deal with things where you're like, oh my God, like, I can't believe that just happened. Or the heightened nature of the business, it really is like just silly at times. So I think you just have to keep a sense of humor and recognize that some of the things that we're dealing with are not life and death, although people treat it like that, right? So that's part of it. And but it's taken me until being older to have that perspective. Like I wouldn't have that perspective at 25. You know, at 25 it was life or death, and now I'm like, oh, it's not.
So when you develop stuff with your studio and you then go to like pitch it to like platforms, what do you actually bring them? Are you bringing a pilot, or are you bringing them like a package, or like what are you bringing to Netflix or Hulu to say, hey, fire?
It depends. It depends on the project, right? If it's an idea that's much harder to explain or execute, or is more execution dependent, we will write a script or do a pretty detailed pitch out. It really depends on what the project is. But we go out with scripts, we go out with pitches. Sometimes we go out with just a book, and we'll bring in a network early if we think that they'll be interested in it. We can build it together. It does feel like in this marketplace, buyers want to come in much earlier and develop, you know, from their point of view, from they know what they're looking for, they know who they want to bring on. So we're seeing more and more that we will bring in buyers, like even if it's just a very loose pitch or just a book.
Anyone else up there that I can't see? I feel so bad. Okay, go for it.
I just want to ask, you were talking about taking risks and how a lot of shows that people didn't really expect to be commercially successful became very commercially successful as well as critically. So I was wondering how often you sign on to projects that you really love, but you don't really think you'll be commercially successful, and you just trust that that commercial success will come because it really connects with you.
Yeah, sometimes it's hard because I think even things that are described as niche can be super commercial and critically and commercially successful. It's hard. You can never go into something saying like, this is going to be an award winner. No one's going to support that, unfortunately. I think that is a great outcome to have both. Like, I think we should be making both critically and commercially successful shows, and that you can do things that feel maybe on their surface niche, but ultimately has to speak to an audience. So from the development process, you just know that there are other people that feel a certain way, right? I think, and I finally have been able to boil down the two things that I know make a good project for me, which are, it has to surprise me. And that means like surprise me in the voice, the point of view, the writing, the idea, and it has to make me feel something. And I know that again, that sounds so basic, but you read so many things where you just go, great, that was a decent script, but I don't feel anything. Whether that's fear, jealousy, you know, emotion, love, whatever that is. And I think if you have those two ingredients, regardless of the subject matter, it will, you know, if people are smart enough on the buying side, it will hopefully be a success.
I found some wood for you under here, I think. Yeah. We have time for one more question, and unfortunately, okay, yes, that I could see.
What's the process like as well too for more emerging voices that you're bringing on as well, and partnering them with the more experienced voices to bring a show to life?
No, that's key for us. I mean, beyond across the studio, we have set programs that are looking to put showrunners, you know, new showrunners, inclusive and diverse showrunners into our shows. So we not only encourage that in our writing rooms and having that, but also across below the line, production. We have a line producers program. So we do it across all production, but certainly for us, it is a key focus, but it starts with the showrunner, right? I mean, one of our educations in this process is you can say that as a studio, but unless you have a showrunner that's supporting that and putting their money where their mouth is, then it doesn't work. So it's a lot of training of our showrunners of what they should be doing, who they should have in their rooms, how they should staff their shows, and then working from every level to ensure that that happens.
These were fantastic questions, you guys. I so appreciate it. I'm going to hire you to be on my prep team next time. So thank you for coming out. Beatrice, thank you so much for all the amazing work that you're doing. We appreciate it. Have a good rest of your day, everyone.